Chapter 27. "Halt! Halt! Wake up!" Horace's shout roused Will from a deep sleep. For a second he was confused, wondering what was happening and where he was. Then he remembered the events of the previous day and threw back his blankets, coming quickly to his feet. Horace was crouched over Halt, who lay on his back as they had placed him. As Will reached his side, Horace looked up at him, fear in his eyes, then turned back to shout again. "Halt! Wake up!" Abelard, who had remained close by his master during the night, sensed the air of concern and neighed nervously, pawing the ground. Halt tossed restlessly on the thin bedroll, trying to throw off the blanket that covered him. His eyes remained shut, but he was muttering to himself. As they watched, he cried out as if in pain. Horace spread his hands in a helpless gesture. "He seemed fine," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I was talking with him a few hours ago, and he seemed fine. Then he went back to sleep. Just a few minutes ago he started tossing and fretting like this, and I tried to wake him up, but he won't wake up." Will leaned forward, closer to the bearded ranger, and put his hand on his shoulder. "Halt," he said tentatively. He shook him gently, trying to rouse him. Halt reacted to the touch, but not the way Will hoped he would. He jerked and shouted something inarticulate and tried to throw Will's hand away from his shoulder with his uninjured hand. He remained unconscious, however. Will tried again, shaking him a little harder this time. "Halt! Wake up, please!" Again, Halt reacted against the touch of Will's hand. "Do you think you should be shaking him like that?" Horace asked anxiously. "I don't know." Will's angry reply was evident of his helplessness. "Can you think of something else better to do?" Horace said nothing, but it was obvious to Will that shaking Halt wasn't achieving anything. It was only distressing him more. He relinquished his grip on the older ranger's shoulder. Instead, he laid his palm gently on his forehead. The skin was hot beneath his touch and felt strangely dry. "He's feverish," he said. All their hopes that Halt would improve after a night's rest were suddenly dashed. He had deteriorated badly in the last few hours. Still keeping his touch as gentle as he could, Will removed the linen bandage covering Halt's forearm. He bent closer, sniffing at the wound. The smell of corruption was faintly noticeable, but it seemed no worse. The discoloration was still evident as well, but like the odor, it hadn't worsened during the night. If anything, the swelling might have come down a little. He touched one fingertip to the swollen skin. Yesterday it had been hot to his touch. Today its temperature felt relatively normal. "Still hot?" Horace asked. He shook his head, a little puzzled. "No, it feels all right," he said, "but his forehead is burning up. I don't understand." He sat back to consider the situation. He wished desperately that he knew more about healing. "Unless," he said slowly, "it means that the poison has moved on from his arm and is in his system now, working its way through him." He looked up and met Horace's worried gaze, then shook his head helplessly. "I just don't know, Horace. I just don't know enough about all this." He busied himself soaking more linen strips in a bowl of cool water and laying them over Halt's forehead, trying to cool him down. He had some dried willow bark in his medical pack, which he knew would reduce the fever, but the problem would be getting Halt to take it. The ranger was still tossing and groaning, but his jaw was now clenched tight. Horace stood and went to Halt's saddlebags, which were a few meters away. He unstrapped the lid of one and rummaged inside, finally producing Halt's map of the area. He studied it for a few minutes, then walked back to sink down beside Will, who was busy ministering to Halt. "What are you looking for?" Will asked him, intent on his task. Horace chewed his lip as he studied the map. "A town, even a large village. There must be somewhere near here where we could find an apothecary or a healer of some kind." He tapped the map with one forefinger. "I figure we're probably somewhere about here," he said, "give or take a few kilometers. How about this? Madler's Drift? It could be more than a half-day's ride away." "Are you proposing we take Halt there?" Will asked. Horace sucked his cheeks in thoughtfully. Moving Halt might not be a good idea. Maybe be better to see if there's anyone there who could help. A local healer. Go there and bring him back. He looked up at Will and saw the doubtful expression on his face. I'll go if you like, he offered. But Will was slowly shaking his head. If either of us goes, it should be me, he said. I can move a lot faster than you can. Yes, I know, Horace conceded. But I thought you might not want to leave him, so I know, Horace, and I appreciate it, but think it through. It's only a hamlet. Odds are there's no healer there. And if there is, do you think a country healer will have the faintest idea how to cure this? He jerked a thumb at Halt, who was groaning, muttering, and grinding his teeth. Horace let out a deep sigh. It might be worth a try. But his voice confirmed that he didn't believe his own words. Will laid a hand on his forearm. Let's face it, even a good country healer is not much more than a herbalist, and the bad ones are little more than charlatans and witch doctors. I don't want someone chanting and waving colored smoke over Halt while he's dying. The word was finally out in the open before anyone could stop himself. Dying. Halt was dying. The hoped-for recovery in what Halt himself had said was a vital 12-hour period simply hadn't happened. Horace was stricken as he heard Will say the word. He had spent hours refusing to confront it, refusing to even consider it. Halt can't die. He can't. He paused, not sure what he was going to say, then finished weakly. He's Halt. He let the map drop from his fingers and turned away, not wanting Will to see the tears that had sprung to his eyes. Halt was indomitable. He was indestructible. He had always been a part of Horace's world for as long as the young man could remember. Even before he had got to know the grim-faced ranger and learned that his forbidding appearance masked a warm and quietly humorous nature, he had been conscious of him as an ever-present feature of life at Castle Redmont. He was a larger-than-life presence, a mysterious figure about whom fantastic tales were told and wild rumors flew. He had survived a score of battles. He had faced warlords and fearsome monsters and triumphed every time. He couldn't die because of a slight scratch on his arm. He couldn't. It just didn't seem possible. Like Will, Horace had been orphaned when he was young, and in recent years he had grown to look upon Halt as a special person in his life. He knew that Will regarded Halt as a father figure, and that Halt returned the feeling. The close personal relationship between master and apprentice was obvious to anyone who knew them. Horace didn't presume to have the same closeness they enjoyed. Theirs was a unique relationship. But Halt had come to assume a role in Horace's life similar to a much-loved and vastly respected uncle. He turned back, no longer concerned if Will saw the tears on his face. Halt deserved those tears, he thought. They were nothing to be ashamed of. Will leaned back on his haunches. He couldn't think of anything more he could do for Halt. The cool cloths on his forehead seemed to be easing him a little. The groaning had died away, and he could no longer see the muscles at the side of Halt's jaw clenched tight. Perhaps if Halt relaxed further, he might be able to coax him to take a few sips of willow bark infusion to bring down his fever. And he could put more salve on the wound, although he sensed that the wound itself was no longer the problem. It had been the source, but now the poison had moved on. The breeze caught the map Horace had dropped, and it began to flutter away. Absent-mindedly, Will caught it and began to fold it. When he looked down, a word seemed to leap off the page. Massendaw. Castle Massendaw. Scene of his battle with the Scotty invaders. And close by Massendaw, clearly marked on the map, stood Grimsdale Wood, home to Malcolm, once thought to be the reincarnation of Malcallum the sorcerer, but now known to a select few as the most skilled and knowledgeable healer in all of Araluan. Horace, he said, staring fixedly at the map. They were old friends. They had been through a great deal together, and Horace knew Will sufficiently well to sense the change in his friend's voice. The hopelessness had gone. Even with that one word, Horace knew that Will had the germ of an idea. He dropped beside his friend and looked over his shoulder, studying the section of the map that was open before him. He, too, saw the name. "Massendar," he breathed. "Malcolm, of course." "A few days ago you said we'd pass close by if we took that detour," Will pointed out. "Where do you think we are now?" Horace took the map and unfolded it to open the next section. He found the reference points he'd used before, the river, the drowned forest. "Around here," he said, indicating a position on the map. "We've come a good way south of the spot where I said it." "True, but we've also come a good way east, and Massendar was to the east of us when you pointed it out. What we've lost by coming south, we've picked up by coming east." Horace pursed his lip uncertainly. "Not quite," he said, "but we're probably only a day and a half away, maybe 2 days." "I'll do it in 1, Will said. Horace raised his eyebrows in disbelief. "1 day? I know Tug can go all day and all night, but even for him that's stretching it, and you'd still have to make the return journey." "I won't be riding Tug all the way," Will told him. "I'll take Abelard too. I can switch between the two and rest them." Horace felt a surge of hope. Will could make it to Massendar in that time if he rode both horses, he realized. Of course, the return journey with Malcolm would be slower. "Then take Kicker as well," he said. He saw Will open his mouth to dismiss the suggestion and hurried on to explain his idea. "Don't ride him on the way to Massendar. Save his strength for the return journey. That way you'll always have one horse resting while you and Malcolm ride the other 2. Will nodded slowly. Horace's suggestion had made good sense. He would be returning with Malcolm, and that would mean the healer would have to ride Abelard. But with Kicker along as well, they'd always have a relatively fresh horse. And neither he nor the slightly built healer would weigh anything like Horace in full armor. "Good idea," he said finally. He studied the map again and came to a decision. "I can save time if I cut across country here." He indicated a spot where the trail made a wide detour around an expanse of rising ground. Horace nodded agreement, then noticing something marked on the map at that point, leaned forward to read the notation. "Barrows," he said. "What are barrows?" "They're ancient burial mounds," Will said. "You find them from time to time in sparsely populated areas like this. Nobody knows who's buried in them. They're assumed to be some ancient race that died out long ago." "And why does the path curve around them the way it does?" Horace asked, although he thought he already knew the answer. Will shrugged, trying to look unconcerned. "Oh, it's just that some folk think they're haunted."